This sort of setup and stack has become our gold standard for what we are moving other production apps to at my company. This is a brand new tool that I've put out. I'm interested in your feedback and what you think. This is the type of thing that at the end of the day, once you see all the pieces in place and once you see them working, it's not that difficult, but it can take hours and hours to get this set up. In one command, you can bootstrap a monorepo, get Turborepo configured, a full stack Next.js web app, a supporting Node.js web app for background job worker, or whatever else you might need, a shared database library using Prisma, Docker Compose for your local database and Redis, and all the other configs and build setup you might need to get going. The key to K4 is that it focuses on simplicity. All the config files, all the configuration is quite simple, and we'll take a look at that as we dive into the code. Let's just go straight to using this thing. To create a K4 stack, simply run npx create K4 at latest, and then give it an app name. Our app will be named Sassy today. Now this is gonna go through and set up the whole monorepo, install a whole bunch of dependencies. So just let this wall of PNPM and console logs entertain you for just a bit. Okay, it's done. So let's open this up in your favorite editor. Mine right now is Cursor. Really cool if you haven't tried it. Before I give you a tour, let's boot this up, see that it's working, and then we'll go through and see what all the parts look like. If you pull up the README file, it tells you right in here how to get started. So it says the first thing to do is start up the developer environment. So we'll run pnpm dev. And this uses the new fancy Turborepo 2.0 UI, where you can arrow up and down between different apps and packages and their outputs. If I go down to the web app, I get a URL that I can open. But first, there's one more thing we need to do. We do need to initialize the database. So I also need to run a pnpm db init. So I'm going to open up a new terminal here, pnpm db init, and my database is ready to go. If I go back over to my other terminal, my web app, I can open up localhost 3000, and I see that I get a blank screen with one button on it called Generate Posts. If I click this button, voila, posts. If I click it again, voila, more posts. Click it again, you got it. So it's just a simple app. It fakes out some tweet-like posts with this little button. Now this is quite an over-engineered stack for just this little functionality, but it puts the pieces together that you would likely need when building a real SaaS application. So now that you know what it does, let's tour around the different components of K4 and see what's involved. First, the monorepo. This is a PNPM monorepo that's supported by Turborepo for running and caching tasks. The setup is quite simple and what you'd come to expect from most Turborepos. So not much to see here. The overall structure of our monorepo is that we have two main directories, apps and packages. Apps are where our applications live. We have one app called web, which is a Next.js application. And in it is what you would get when you run create next app. In fact, K4 runs create next app under the hood for this directory. Worker is a Node.js application that uses BullMQ. It sits and listens for jobs and executes them when they come through. Now, when you're working across multiple apps, even in this simple case, you're likely going to want to share code and share packages between them. So that's where the packages directory comes in. First is a DB package. This is the library that includes Prisma, migrations, and everything we would need for database access. Even a utility for generating IDs with NanoID. Moving right along, we have a Docker dev package. And this isn't so much code as it is just a place to put our Docker Compose file. The reason I did this is I quite like how the output of this, I can, with the Turborepo UI, switch between different places here. And I can see my Docker dev output here, and then see the outputs of all of the different apps and packages. So this just worked out nicely in the structure. We have shared ESLint config and TypeScript config. And I can't stress this enough, a key tenet of this setup is while there are several pieces that need to work together, I want to keep the configuration as minimal and simple as possible. I've seen lots of other full stack bootstrap CLI tools that just come with loads of bloated setup and configuration. My goal with K4 is to keep this simple, simple, simple. So for instance, if we look at the Node.js ESLint config, this is exactly what you'd get from the stock config with the built-in recommendations, essentially 4 lines of configuration. For TypeScript config, There is a great package called @tsconfig/node and then whatever node version you're using that come with really nice stock tsconfig. So I'm simply using those and extending that and applying only the necessary config we need to get ESM modules and builds up and running. And then finally, our last package is Q. This is a package that sets up our background job. So it sets up types for the job names, the data that each job accepts, some functions to enqueue and wait on jobs. This is something that can be called from the web app, but also used in our worker when listening for these jobs. Now that you have the lay of the land, let's take a look at how these packages are used inside the apps. First, let's look at our web app. There's really only one page. It's called Page, and it uses the database from the database package to pull in the latest posts, order them, and by the way, everything is typed and the types flow across the packages within the monorepo very nicely, very simply, and very automatically. So when we pull in our posts here, we're using a React server component, async, pulling in the posts from the database and rendering those to the screen. We have a generate post button, which is a submit button for a form action calls a server action generate posts. Let's take a look at that. This is defined in our actions file, which uses a function enqueue and wait from our repo queue package. Again, all the types carry over nicely. This took me a bit to figure out, but you can even option click on this and it will take you to the source file in the whole other package. So you don't lose that development experience, the DX, when you're in a monorepo like this, needing to navigate between packages and apps. So again, server function, we enqueue a job called generate posts. We give it a count. We're in fact going to wait on that job to finish, and then Next.js is going to revalidate this path, essentially refreshing the page. Where does this get run? This gets run in our worker app. It sets up a worker. This is from the package bullmq. Bullmq has been my favorite job queue in Node and TypeScript. I've used it for several years, works really well. I've defined some runners here, job runners. So for the generate post job type, we're going to use this function, and it simply comes in here, loops through the count, generates some fake data with the faker package, and adds that to the database. So it creates a new worker, listens for jobs, runs those jobs, and it even uses the Redis connection that we're getting from the repo queue package. So all of these packages get to talk to each other. Types carry over nicely. When you have npm dev running, everything rebuilds and watches automatically for you. It's a really smooth and simple developer experience. Now granted, if this was all your app is doing, you don't need all this setup. If you're just clicking a button and generating some posts, you don't need this. But for many apps, you get to the point where you need a job queue with Next.js. In our case at my company, we're building a SaaS app that we're releasing soon. It's an issue tracker with our special secret sauce. And it is a full stack Next.js application. Loving that. But we wanted to add a Slack integration into that. The Slack integration framework, very much not compatible with Next.js. So we needed a sidecar Node.js app that we could build our Slack integration into, but then we needed to share a bunch of things between the Next.js app and the Node.js app. So really this create K4 CLI has been extracted from that SaaS app that we're building. And so the fundamentals here of the structure, of the setup, of how things are running, this is what we are actually using now in production at our company. So again, this tiny example, do I need a background job queue for this generate post button? No, I do not. But this gives us a small demo app, putting the pieces together that you'd often need in a real-life production application of how to have multiple apps that share code together, build processes that actually work, that use the latest ESM modules, that use TypeScript, that keeps the config very short and sweet. By the way, I didn't even show you that. So if I go in here and look at how these things build. Let me go into the database package. Each of these packages are built with tsup. So if you look at the build script here, we've got tsup. And if I look at the tsup config, it's like 4 lines. It's nothing. We use ESM modules, we have an entry point, we add source maps and clean the directory when we build. Very simple. A few other quick niceties before you go. We're automatically setting the TypeScript version if you're using VS Code. So it's using the TypeScript version in this project. We have a prettier config, which is just the defaults. At least on our team, we just rely on our editor to format on save. But there is also a format command at the root level of the project. And I'll point one other command out here, and that is the db reset command. Oftentimes when I'm developing, I want to blow everything away and start over. And so I've added in a command here that will wipe out the local Postgres database, remigrate everything over, and start fresh. So that's good to know that it's there. What do you think? Give it a try. I would love to hear your thoughts on how it goes. Drop me a comment down below. The repo is public if you want to submit a pull request, if you've got some ideas. Yeah, curious to know what you think. Like I said, what this produces is what we are using in production. And this sort of setup and stack has become our gold standard for what we are moving other production apps to at my company, Stoke Studio. All right, happy building. I'll see you next time.